This 76ers team is embarrassing. They look bad right now, and there's definitely a lot of worry for the squad going forward. They fall to an extremely shorthanded Pelicans team. We're going to break it down in just a moment.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On 76ers. We're your host, Keith Pompey, a Sixers beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Kayla Santiago as well, your host for Locked On 76ers with Keith Pompey with you each and every day as we're going to get into the action, also cover the Delaware Bluecoats as well from my experience on that end too. And if you want to watch us and listen to us, you can watch us on YouTube and listen to wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, there's a free daily newsletter on LockedOnDaily.com if you want to see and read all things Philadelphia 76ers. So they fall to the Pelicans 123-115. There was a lot of technical fouls going on in this game. Nick Nurse a little bit questionable, and then losing their last few matchups does not look good going into this big stretch. So, Keith, I started off the show. My takeaway is this is embarrassing for the Philadelphia 76ers. There was a number of Pelicans out last night for this team, including Ingram and Zion Williamson, a late scratch as well. We know the news surrounding that, but this team, a lack of intensity defensively. They didn't look like they were getting back. How do you drop a game like this knowing the schedule you have coming up? I don't care if Joel Embiid is going to go out there and play. You cannot perform like that in a game like this. They looked really bad, and CJ McCollum said, well, if you guys are going to lack on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to put up 38 points on the evening as well.
Well, you know what? It's like I said before, you keep saying lacking intensity, this and that. I just don't think they're that good. I mean, to be honest with you. And, it's a little bit unfortunate to say that, and I feel bad by saying it. But this team was built around the big three. Mm-hmm. And Joel Embiid is like basically the main piece, right? But then when Joel Embiid doesn't play, you say to yourself, okay, we picked up Andre Drummond, right? Oh, well, Kyle Lowry is a little bit old, but at the same time, he's the only pure point guard that we have. And by the way, KJ Martin was a guy who basically started playing in above his pay grade, so to speak, and played with a lot of energy. And Jared McCain, he was the savior early in the season. Well, none of those guys played. And when you look at it, Gershon Yabusele, a great player, but you kind of figured that it will come a point in time where someone would take advantage of his lack of size, right? And do that. And that's what happened. So I just think that right now the 76ers are who we think they are without Joel Embiid, or who their record says they are. They're a team that's 15-21. They can't make any defensive stops. Their perimeter defense is atrocious. And the problem is they complained too much. And what happens is we look at it, they lost to the worst team in the Western Conference, like you said, without four of their best players. And not only that, you look at the only wins they had over this recent stretch. It was against the Washington Wizards, who were atrocious, and the Brooklyn Nets, who resembled a G League team that night. So that's who the Sixers are. They're just not that good.
And it's crazy to say that, and that we have to put that out there when you have players like Paul George on your team and Tyrese Maxey. I mean, nothing is clicking. They can't get up and down the floor. It just doesn't seem like there's any cohesion. Keith, let me ask you this, because I've been seeing a lot of talk right now surrounding Nick Nurse, and we're going to talk about in a little bit the technical foul that he had, but also Doc Rivers and Nick Nurse are starting to get compared at this point right now throughout Nick Nurse's coaching career with the Philadelphia 76ers. Do you think that is fair to compare? Because there's conversation that Doc Rivers never has coached this bad under the 76ers, and Nick Nurse looks like such a worse coach right now. I'm not saying go and fire Nick Nurse, right? Because I do think that he's definitely had an unfair deal with everything that's been going on. But at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of questionable things on the coaching end as well. Rotations, that lack of intensity we allude to, just the way that they're not able to get back on defense. There has to be some disconnection there as well.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, and I get it. Nick Nurse is he's done some things where you say, "Wow, this is crazy," or whatever. But at the same time, I do feel like Doc Rivers didn't have to go through the things that Nick Nurse is going through right now.
No.
And when you
Mm-mm.
look at it, I'm talking about, you know, they go out there. Joel Embiid is banged up. You have so many different lineups. You have I mean, let's face it, this team is built around three players,
Yep.
and those players only played together 13 times, I believe, right? No, less than that. It was like 10 times. 10 times, right? So they only been on a court together 10 out of what is it? Um 36 games. So that's crazy. 10 out of 36 games. So Nick Nurse is basically at one point, let's look at the starting lineup. You got Caleb Martin, undrafted, Gershon, just got back in the league. Kelly Oubre, first round pick, Tyrese Maxey, first round pick, Paul George. But coming off the bench, Ricky Council, Eric Gordon, Adem Bona, Reggie Jackson, Jeff Doughton Jr. Doc Rivers had a loaded roster compared to this. But Nick has been making you could question some of the moves he's made, but at the same time, you can't make a masterpiece when you got water paint.
You're
you
right. You're
know,
right. The pieces of the puzzle, they're from different boxes of puzzles because nothing's fitting at this point. I mean, I agree with you in the sense that I think you need to give Nick Nurse more time. This team hasn't played together, but right now, I mean, I understand how good of a player Joel Embiid when he is 100% and he is dominant on the floor, but Keith, we've talked about this before too. When Joel Embiid is in the lineup, it seems like everybody just plays a little bit better. They play off of him a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier, it seems like, for everybody else involved. So if you're the big fella right now, I understand that you are not quote unquote playing on back to backs, but Nick Nurse, they have a plan for that, is what we're being told. But at the same time, if this is how bad it's going to look, you can even kiss playing goodbye because right now, if this team can't win without you and they look this bad without you, Joel Embiid needs to figure out a way to play some games or maybe just shut it down for the rest of the season. And I don't want to fully go there at that point, but right now, this season without him, they cannot play basketball together. It has been really tough to watch. And I alluded to it at the top of the show. It's embarrassing. They're a bad team. Listen, they're a bad team. And there's a lack of intensity. And there's a lack of intensity on the defensive side of the ball, too. So it's just all bad right now. It's not sunny in Philadelphia right now.
no, it's not. I mean, but it's something that they signed up for. I mean, they said the load management thing in the beginning. They didn't think it was going to be this bad, but you are correct. And I wrote that in the Inquirer, a week ago, and I got criticized for it because people were like, "Hey, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?" This is what I'm talking about. Joel Embiid can't play over an extended period of time right now. He just can't. And what happens is when he doesn't play, the team just looks bad. And and then there were the times he did play that he got ejected, and then he got hurt.
Right.
So it's like one of those things where what are you going to do? Because right now we're talking about they lost 4 out of 6 games against
Mm-hmm.
losing teams. So what's going to happen when the gauntlet comes up in a couple weeks? So yeah, you raise a great point. I mean, they look bad, and like tonight, last night rather. I mean, this was the worst team in the league played without 4 of their top 5 starters, and they shot 59% in the fourth quarter against you. They made 6 of 9 threes, right? I mean, come on. It was just crazy. And then they even turned the ball over and they even only made 4 of 7 free throws. So they were trying to give you the game back, but you couldn't overcome it. So they Sixers have a problem. And you're right. Joel Embiid makes him such a better player, but his availability isn't actually there.
And you know the saying of availability is the best ability. I looked at that a few seasons ago when a lot of people were comparing the Joker and Joel Embiid and said, all right, well, Joel's just injured. No, he'll be fine. He's still an MVP caliber player, as is Jokic as well. And now you look at it and you're saying, okay, that is absolutely true at this point because look at what Jokic has been able to do. He has been able to win the MVP, able to win an NBA championship. And I'm not saying that Joel is going to be able to do that right away if he stays 100% healthy, but the odds are definitely better if Joel Embiid can. And you start to look at it consistently throughout the playoffs. And we look at this and we say, okay, well, James Harden didn't show up in the playoffs or Ben Simmons didn't show up in the playoffs. After this season, if this team falls as they do, you look to start blaming Joel Embiid and his injury past. And you feel bad for him a bit because the injury seems so crazy. I mean, he gets smacked in the face and that happens. But at the same time, your availability is the best ability. And that statement is true right now because we are seeing it play out with Joel Embiid not on the floor with this team.
Yeah, you're right. Availability is the best ability, right now. But they still have. The crazy thing is, I think this team is struggling, but at the same time, what do they played 36 games, so they got more than 40 games left. So I feel like it's one of those things where it could possibly turn around. I doubt it. I totally doubt it. But people are going to say that about him. And the fact is, like, let's face it. And I get it. Maybe it's like the weird thing about Joel, and not to be long winded, but you know they're making it seem as if that is something wrong with his foot. But he played well after injuring his foot, and he said nothing was wrong with it. It makes you wonder, is it the knee? But the
Right.
crazy part is when you have Paul George and you have Tyrese Maxey, two all-stars, and they played against the bum squads in the league who don't have any all-stars, and you lose or you barely win, Joel Embiid shouldn't have to play in these games.
Right.
If this team was a contender, Joel shouldn't have to play for you to win. And the fact that they lost is kind of like scary moving forward.
Yeah, it's a head scratcher to think, Nick Nurse does say he has a plan but the plan still isn't to overload Joel Embiid and they're going to sit him when they can. But this team is playing like they really can't sit Joel Embiid because they're losing against a shorthanded Pelicans team as well. So it's just not good for the Philadelphia 76ers right now. They look like a bad team. They're playing like a bad team, but there's a lot of other things we kind of want to touch on after this game as well. In just a moment here too, some of the technical fouls, the thing that Nick Nurse is, going maybe a little bit too much at the refs and causing some havoc there, hurting the Sixers down the line. So we'll touch on that on the other side. All right. So the technical foul goes to Nick Nurse, and he has seemed, especially as of late, a lot more vocal to the refs, and officials just got a little bit tired of it. But Keith, in this game last night, it definitely turned the tides just a little bit.
Now you said as of late.
I
Like
mean,
Nick,
I know it just seems like it's up a notch. He is going and going and going. And I know that's how he's been throughout his coaching career. But I mean, I feel like every second I look and Nick Nurse is in the corner screaming at the officials, something's going on. And I'm just like, just play basketball. Maybe you just focus on playing basketball to work out a little bit better for you guys.
the thing is, and it's not just him. Like when you look
No, it's
at it,
not. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the Sixers complain after every play that doesn't go their way, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, sometimes players appear to be more focused on arguing perceived missed calls than getting back on defense, right? And those antics led to two of their three technical fouls last night. And it's crazy. They had three technical fouls. One was Paul George and CJ McCollum got a double tech, right? The another one was when Caleb Martin received the technical foul for speaking to a referee or saying something to the ref with 7 minutes and 28 seconds remaining. And the Sixers were down 101-90, right? Now, but the thing is, they lost momentum when Nurse was called for a technical foul with 3 minutes and 48 seconds remaining. Like Philly was on a 9-0 run and closed the gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was what was the score? I mean, they closed the gap. I believe it was like 10 points at that point
Yeah.
before Nurse received the technical, right? And then from that point, it's like he receives the tech. And then it's like they go on a run. Like they go on a run and it's over. I mean, it's basically over. Like they score 4 consecutive points and then it's like game over. So it's like that cost them the game, in my opinion, because then the closest they got, they were within 7 points. So the closest they got is when they came back and got within seven again, and it was just crazy. Like Nick Nurse, good coach. But Nick, that was something that you couldn't afford to do, and that's something that cost your team the game.
And I think they're really going to have to look at that going forward and realize how that hurts them. Now we're going to wait and see if Joel Embiid, if he comes, out during the stretch, when he will come out as well to play for this team. But you look at it right now and you say there's a lot of frustration. You can tell because, after those plays, the players are looking for the foul more than they're looking for the bucket. And you're right about Nick Nurse kind of happening at the wrong time. And they need to reel it back just a little bit. I don't mind them playing with energy, but it's more frustration right now than it is energy for this team. And that's really starting to hurt them in the long run. What you don't want in a game like this, and especially a game where Joel Embiid isn't playing, any certain thing to happen where momentum shifts. Yes, runs are going to happen. It's the NBA. That's what happens. But when you have momentum, when you're starting to make a little bit of a comeback in a game that they should have handily won, by the way, they shouldn't even have been coming back, let alone lose the contest. Yet they do, and that does happen. But at the same time, when you're in a game like that without Joel Embiid, you can have momentum not go your way. It's not going to be a good sign for the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, it was a tough night last night in all realms. Tyrese Maxey still put up 30 points, though, in that contest. PG with 25, but it was just not a great night for the Philadelphia 76ers. Once again, they fall 123 to 115. And we alluded to it before. We're going to touch on it in just a moment here. They've dropped 4 of their last 6, and they have a huge stretch coming up and a very tough stretch at that. And this is why games like this were so important to come out victorious. So now you face the gauntlet of your schedule in January, and we'll touch on that here in a moment. So they fall to the Pelicans, and this is where you really start to worry for the Philadelphia 76ers. They got the Magic up next. That's in Orlando. And then they take on the Thunder at home. Then it's the Knicks, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Nuggets. And it doesn't get easier after that. I mean, Keith, I don't think any game is a must win at this point of the season, but this was definitely a game that you must win in this situation, right? Because you look at this situation, you say, they barely came out on top against the Washington Wizards. They can't have that bad of a game again. They said, all right, well, let us show you that we can have that bad of a game. Even worse, they're going to fall in the contest with Paul George in the lineup. So it's a must win in the situation that they were in. They don't come out on top. And now you faced a terrible schedule. Looking at the schedule in January, Keith, we said, they're going to come out victorious on the upper end side of that 500 mark, not overall, but in the games that we touched on. And now losing 4 of their last 6. I mean, this is just dangerous territory to be in right now for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of, it's dangerous. I mean, but I just think they are who they are. I mean, like, I mean, even if the Sixers would have won these games, I mean, they still were going to be the underdogs.
They were.
I mean, they're going up against OKC. Now, the thing that can help the Sixers is that people sleep on them. And then maybe, but I don't see it. I just don't see them doing well. I mean, first of all, they can come out and say whatever they want to say, but you have to know that the confidence is down, right?
Yeah.
You have to know that. So yeah, I mean, I can't even give a prediction on it because it's like I don't want to.
We don't know. We don't know what's
it
going
ain't
to
a
happen.
matter of knowing. They're just not that good right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can, like, I just don't think that the 76ers are a good team. I think they're going in a funk right now. You got the injuries going. I feel like, they can say whatever they want about sticking together and just playing this and playing that. But when you lose the way you're losing, it's going to hurt the confidence. And you're looking at it, and you got your best player he makes the team so much better, but he's not playing all the time. You don't know when you can depend on him and you need him. So like I it's rough. Like it's really rough for the Sixers moving forward. I mean, it just is. I mean, this is a disappointing season. And
Mm-hmm.
for a while they kept saying, "Oh, it's early. It's early.
That's
It's
still, yeah,
early."
that's still what they're saying, right?
It's no longer early anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not early. It's late. It's late. I mean, it's getting late now. You're looking at all these other teams ahead of you. They're starting to figure things out, and you still don't even know how to you still don't even know how uh to make Paul George and Joel Embiid coexist together. I
Right.
mean, think
That's
about
another
it.
big thing. That's another big thing, right?
It's 36 games into the season, and you've only had your big three on the floor together 10 times, and Paul George struggles mightily when he plays next to Joel Embiid.
He does. And I think the biggest thing that I look at this too, and you know, they're not a good team, right, going into this, but I did think that the 76ers were going to play better than this and win some games and come out on the better side of things, especially in this Pelicans game. I even said it via Twitter today, or via X, I should say, that the 76ers, oh, Williamson's not playing. Okay, well, Paul George is in the lineup. They should win this game, right? They should win this game. They have four of their players that are not playing on the side of the Pelicans, right? They should come out on top or at least be in control. It didn't even feel like they were in control the entirety of this game because they really weren't. Now you go into this gauntlet of a schedule, which I agree with you on the point of, yes, they're the underdog in all of these games, but also I thought they would be going in a little bit better into these contests because I thought they would have felt like they needed to, right? I thought they would have felt like they needed to fight a little bit harder in these games, play better, try to figure something out and get something going, not hand a game almost away. When you look at that Wizards game a few games ago, not almost handed away to the low-ended Washington Wizards, and not lose against the Pelicans that were extremely shorthanded. Those are games that the 76ers could have won with this roster, and they did not. And that's the problem I look at when you're going into this gauntlet of a schedule where you're right, they are underdogs, but I did not expect them to go into the schedule like this.
Yeah, and the one thing that I will say is I do think that this Pelicans team is, well, the Pelicans did beat the Wizards, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the Sixers is that they can't cover. They're like the anti-analytics team. And what I mean by that is they get killed in the paint in
Mm-hmm.
transition, and they can't stop somebody from, if you're a good 3-point shooter, you can't stop them, and you just can't stop the 3-point shooter. So you look at it like, to me, if DeJounte Murray did not play, then I felt like, okay, maybe you have a chance, because now you're going to have CJ McCollum bring the ball up, do a lot of other things, right? But he has a history of destroying them, right?
Yep.
He does. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they can't guard the perimeter was just leaving this guy open. We all get a kick out of like Steph Curry. Everybody wants to say, Steph Curry was 8 for 8. He had a superhuman game. Nah, Steph Curry is a great shooter. He's the all-time, he has the most 3 points in NBA history, 3-pointers. If you leave him open, this guy makes half court shots.
Yeah.
So if you
In
leave
his
him
sleep.
open in his sleep, it's like him shooting foul shots.
Yeah.
So then you have a guy like CJ McCollum who shot 6 for 11 on threes, but then you have a guy, Jordan Hawkins, who was 5 for 11 on threes. So it's kind of like, I just feel like, yeah, they should have won the game, but man, you had a 3-point shooter just torching you like it was easy money out there. So they have problems. They have problems.
They do, and we're going to see if they can try to pull any upsets. Once again, we're not going to predict and go through that throughout this gauntlet of a schedule because we don't know a lot. The 76ers, they're underdogs going into every single game. That's what I'm going to say. That's my takeaway going through the schedule, and we're on the same page with that. Will Joel Embiid play? We're going to wait and see what's going on with that injury too, because it's not looking good going forward for the Philadelphia 76ers right now. Once again, they fall 123 to 115 to the extremely shorthanded Pelicans. And we'll wait and see when they play the Magic. That is next up on their schedule. They play them at 6 p.m. coming up tomorrow. So we'll wait and see on the road what the Philadelphia 76ers are capable of. Well, we don't want to be all negative and all doom and gloom. People, we got to be realistic here. This is what's happening right now. We're bringing you the facts. We're analyzing what's going on. And the 76ers, they're just not very good right now, plain and simple. So we'll see if they can improve their record going forward. But this is an extremely tough part of the schedule you look at in these next few games in the next few weeks. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. Once again, they fall to the Pelicans 123-115. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you all next time.